Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be giving you our top 5 favorite shows of all time. These will include television as well as streaming service shows. Let's just get right into it. What do you got for your number 5 spot?
For my number 5, I have a show that's still going on currently, but it's The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian just when it was announced that it was coming out, I think it was like 2 years ago. But when it was announced, I was like, I don't know if I really want to see something about I don't know about that Creed. As much as I love Star Wars, I don't really know if I want to see the Mandalorian Creed. I was big on the Clone Wars, but I didn't really know. And the show is just fucking spectacular. It's just like such a Star Wars Western kind of show, and it's just and it makes it really grounded. It doesn't go too in depth with the space lore of Star Wars. Like it's whenever every season pretty much is handled in like some core locations, so it definitely feels like it's like an isolated kind of show.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that I don't have Disney Plus yet. I've been kind of holding off on it until the Marvel shows start to come out. But that's one where when I get caught up on everything, I may want to try to check that out. But good pick.
Thank you.
All right, so for my number 5 pick, I have Scooby Doo, Where Are You? So the original series from 1969. Just one of the most iconic cartoons of all time. The original series still holds up today. I have the first 2 seasons on DVD, and I like to watch them from time to time, even nowadays, just for a nostalgia trip. So it's really good entertainment when I'm sick. Honestly, if I have a cold or something and I'm laid up in bed, I might throw that on. It's just a show with a bizarre premise that works really well for some reason. Just a great show.
I think it's one of the most nostalgic shows that I can think of. Like one of my favorites. And I think even if you've never seen Scooby Doo, which is just insane to me to think about, I think it's just so popular that everybody just knows that name and that shit. Like they pretty much know every character. And if they see even one character somewhere, they'll know what it's from just because it's such a popular show.
Yeah, exactly. The main mascot Scooby Doo is like even if you've never seen the show, you know the name, you know the character. It's kind of like Pokemon. Like even if you don't know Pokemon, you know Pikachu because he's everywhere.
Right.
So it's just that sort of thing. And then the theme song also is just so iconic. I mean,
for my number 4 pick, I have Stranger Things. I honestly didn't even think I was going to put it on this list, but then I thought about it some more. I love the show so much, and I don't know, it just gives me such of like a ET vibe or like Goonies, just all around. Just because it's just like the core characters are the kids, and like the side characters are pretty much every adult, except for I guess the police chief Hopper. But other than him, it's pretty much the core. Like the core group is the kids, and everything about it is so 80s. That's like my favorite time era. So anything like movie, book, video game, anything related in that time era, I'm gonna have a blast with. Like we talked about it in Call of Duty, like the Cold War episode we did. The reason I love it so much is just because it's so centered on the 80s. And Stranger Things gives you kind of like that entire vibe. Like it gives you the whole old monster TV show movie vibe, but everything just set in the 80s. Out their clothes, the music. And I think when I thought about that a little bit more, I couldn't not have it in my top 5.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's one of those where it really was kind of a surprise. Like it came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
At just one summer, and then just everyone fell in love with it immediately. So for my number 4, I'm also gonna go with a Netflix series. It's Big Mouth. Once I watched the very first episode, like even just 5 minutes in, I was like, "This is fantastic." It's just one of my favorite shows of all time already, just because of the characters, the situations, the jokes. They're all raunchy and dark, which just appeals to my dark sense of humor. All the situations and emotions they go through as they try to navigate through puberty and coming of age are just spot on. Like, to the point where some of the things actually happen to me that have happened in the show. And I'm sure, like, countless of other kids have had those situations, too. So, it isn't meant for kids to watch by any means, due to the graphic language and visuals and stuff, but I almost wish they could because of the insights it gives into puberty and, like, growing up, because it actually does have some pretty good advice and life lessons if you look past all the dirty jokes and everything. Like there's a lot of good metaphors and lessons in there that I kind of wish that someone tells you like are actually things that happen to you when you're growing up like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's just it almost feels like there's an adult that's just being honest with you in a conversation instead of just the normal bullshit that usually you get when you get like the talk or something.
Like you said, it's not necessarily made for kids because of the cursing and everything, but in a weird way, it's almost necessary for kids, is what I would like saying, just because it gives you the no filter insight on things that you're not alone with. It's very that's the entire show. It's just kids navigating through their puberty and everything like that. And whether it's on the female side or the male side, it just touches on everything. And the voice acting's it's so fantastic. And almost
Yeah.
every character is Nick Kroll, damn near, and it's so good.
So, but yeah, so many great voices. Kelly and I watch it. We're like to the point where like a thing happens and one of us is screaming out, "That happened to me," or "I remember feeling like that." It's just so relatable and so great.
Yeah, me and Ann have done that with that show so many times. We're like, oh, yeah, I've been there. So, all right, so for my number three, I have a show that I know you haven't even seen yet, Connor. I've mentioned it to you, but yeah, you definitely got to check it out. But it is The Boys. The Boys came out of nowhere for me too. I know it's a graphic novel. I know it's based on that. And I know it's just very dark comic, different telling of pretty much superheroes. What are they like behind closed doors? What if what we're being told, in any superhero movie, whether it's Marvel, DC, what if all these characters that we know and love are only these shining beacons of hope in the spotlight? And what would it be like if everything was just politicized and then behind closed doors, these people are some like horrible motherfuckers? This show does such a good job at it. And yeah, like I said, come out of nowhere. And the second season just, happened like a couple months ago, I think now. And once that, me and Anna binged the shit out of it, we went straight through it. And it immediately became one of our favorite shows, to the point where she's not super huge on superhero like movies or shows. Like, she loves them, but when this one comes out, it's just such a different type of show, to where you don't really know what to expect, and everything is so. There's the one character in there, Homelander. He's one of the most unpredictable characters in the show, to the point where every single time he's on the scene, we don't know what's going to happen, and I love that feeling of suspense, and that's what this show does.
Yeah, actually, Kelly and I just watched the first season. We finished it last weekend.
Ooh.
So, because I decided to go ahead and start checking it out, because I know we said we wanted to do a video about it eventually. Because
Yeah.
I had always been interested in it, I just never took the time to sit down and watch it. So, yeah, we both love it too, because it's a very different take. And there are some pretty uncomfortable situations that arise, mostly with Homelander, because he's kind of a sociopath. It's kind of like it's a darker, more realistic, if we're being honest, look at what it would be like if superheroes were real. Most of them would probably be more villainous behind the scenes, and just act like they're doing good. All right, so for my number three spot, I have Stranger Things in my number three.
Ooh.
It just barely beat out Big Mouth, just a little bit, just in terms of quality. I mean, Big Mouth, for all of its lessons and dirty jokes and the humor that I like and everything, it doesn't have much in terms of like quality storytelling or anything. Stranger Things does, like we all talked about earlier. The same points that we'll bring up. It does feel like an '80s like adventure sci-fi movie. Whether the kids are the main characters, and they're the heroes of the story, and the adults, basically, except for Hopper and Joyce, are basically just non-existent in the show. Some of the best kid acting I've ever seen, and they're young adults now, so I mean they're growing into it, but they just did such a great job. And the special effects on all of the creatures and everything was like movie quality, like better than some movies on a Netflix show. So I really have to give them credit where it's due there.
We're like growing up with the kids, essentially, because the kids, if you watch season one, it's now season three that came out. They're significantly older now, at least by a couple years, and it's right at that puberty stage too. So even though it's like a couple years, it's right where they look like the smallest kids, to now looks like they're going, like, getting ready to go through high school, which they are. But it's just like you're growing up with them. I know the show is talked about going to 5 seasons, because the writers only ever wanted it to go to 4 or 5 seasons, because they had the whole story planned out. And by then, it's just going to be this whole culmination of just seeing these personalities develop, and these looks develop, and you're just growing up with all these characters, and I think it's something that's going to last kind of a long time. But then my number 2 is Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, I have seen the entire show like 5 times. You see it as a story about a teacher who has cancer, and is going to just start cooking meth to get by and create um, financial stability for his family when he's gone. And at that, you're like, okay, well, how much could this show really be? And then when you get into it, it's just scenario after scenario of shit happening and covering up because his brother-in-law is a DEA agent, so it's also just hiding from that while also having family time with this guy. And the entire show, I think, is just some of the best acting I've ever seen, some of the best emotional strings being pulled that I've ever seen. I didn't expect to, when I watched season one, to truly care for even Jesse Pinkman's character as much as I did. And now he's one of my favorite actors that I've ever seen. And then the show itself is just so masterful than I thought it was going to be. Because like I said, at first when I watched it, I was like, okay, how far could this show really go? And then when you watch it and you get into it, it's hard to put it down. And I haven't met two people that aren't a fan of the show, even though I have met a couple. But either way, for the most part, I think it's unanimously loved by most, and I think it's for the same reasons. Just the acting is fantastic.
Yeah, I can't really comment too much on this. I've never seen it. I don't. It's just one of those things where it's not in my wheelhouse. It doesn't pique my interest.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's things that I think I would be interested in, and I just don't get around to watching them. And there's things that I think I would just have no interest in at all, and I think it would be just taking up time that I could be watching something else that I would get interested in. So it's just one of those where, and I'm not denying at all that it's a good show. The acting I know is superb. Bryan Cranston, I mean, it won so many awards, and I hear people talk about it all the time as it being their favorite show, their number one show of all time. So I'm not denying the cultural significance or anything like that. I know it's a good show for people who are into that sort of topic. I'm just not into it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
If I were to sit here and say I've never seen it, but it's also the most horrendous piece of shit ever, then I feel like that would be that. Then you could get mad at me for it. But I'm not denying that it's good. I'm just saying I don't have any interest in it. So
I agree. Sometimes I don't want to pick up shows that people tell me about because I'm like, there's so many things that I could be just watching right now that I enjoy, and I don't want to touch that shit. Maybe one day whenever everybody stops talking about it, maybe I'll go watch it.
yeah, I think it's one of those things too. And this is all areas, not just this show in particular, but like if I already saw something and it piqued my interest a little bit, and then someone recommended that I watch it, that's generally when I try to give it a chance. But if I know for sure that I have no interest in watching it, and then someone tries to convert me, that's when it almost like makes me not want to watch it even more. Because it's almost like then I'm just doing it just for you. Like to get off my back about it. So I don't have to hear you complain that I haven't watched it yet or anything. Alright, so for my number 2 spot, I'm going to get up on my soapbox a little bit to start this one out. Because I just want to kind of preface this by saying, you and I are both nerds. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I own up to it. But I've had a hard time in the past really kind of being proud to show my hobbies and stuff like that. Just sometimes it's made to feel like it's immature, you need to grow up, that sort of thing. But I like what I like, and I'm going to start not being so ashamed of it and everything. And I've done a really good job with that in the past couple years, but the only reason I'm kind of just trying to preface this is just because my number 2 spot is Power Rangers. And it's just, I didn't rank it this high because of quality or anything like that. It got this high just because of sheer nostalgia and memories. I mean, the last 10 years, it's unfortunately become a low-budget kids show aimed only to sell toys, which, don't get me wrong, it's always been a kids show aimed at selling toys, but the quality of acting was far better, and the lessons and themes were much more mature in the early installments of the franchise, especially the Zordon era, where Mighty Morphin Power Rangers started all that. Holds a really special place in my heart. 1993, and now I was born in 1994, but I did get to watch the current seasons as I got a little bit older, and then the VHS tapes for reruns and stuff until I was pretty caught up. And still to this day, just one of the most recognizable and epic theme songs of all time. The toys and stuff that came out of the show are just great memories that I have playing with them when I was little. It's all just very nostalgic. But I have shelves right now in my game room of Power Rangers collectibles, and I love looking at them. It just takes me back to a simpler time. The Zordon era is the best time for Power Rangers, and especially with the fourth installment of the franchise, In Space, which is my favorite season. It's just regarded by many fans, including myself, to be the season that saved it from being canceled. The last episode aired in November 1998. And due to the season being a success after declining ratings from the prior seasons, Fox decided to renew the show for another season. And then here we are today. The current season is the 27th season. And the show has been going for 27 years. So it just really has just a legacy that, despite it being marketed and all that as a kid's show, there's still tons of people who grew up in the 90s that are just in love with the show and the characters and everything that it brought. And it honestly, if you go back and watch some of those older seasons, the adult themes and the acting and the fight scenes and everything are actually pretty good in most of the situations. I'll always go back and watch reruns of the older stuff.
I think it touches on so many age groups, and you can look past the big colorful spandex suits and like the big mecha suits that they get into.
Some of it too is like you go back and watch it and be like, wow, that was super cheesy. It's very campy and hokey by all means. I'm not denying that. But that's also what kind of makes it endearing. So yeah, it's just one of those things that I'm just never gonna be able to let go of, and yeah, I'm always gonna be a big fan.
I have 4 honorable mentions. I narrowed it down to at least 4. I'm not going to touch too much on them. I'm just going to kind of go through them just a little bit here. But one of them is The Punisher, one of my favorite Marvel Netflix shows. I think whenever he premiered on Daredevil, which is also an amazing show, I wanted to see more of him, so I'm glad they did a standalone series with him. Another one is another Netflix show, Mindhunter. I love true crime and serial killer kind of psychology, and Mindhunter is just so excellent at going in depth on how the term serial killer was even coined, and just touching on all these psychotic individuals, people that are just mentally deranged. It's just so interesting, and I think the show is fantastic. Another one is an HBO show, Westworld. It actually almost made it on my top 5, like right at number, like I think it was almost my number 1, but I just had so many to put in there. But Westworld is just so surprisingly good. I think the reason I jumped it down to honorable mention is I'm not a fan currently of where it's at now. At season 3 is how far we're in. But huge fan of season 1 and 2, and it's a show that I have to truly pay attention to because there's so much shit that you have to like just coin together, and they do reveals and everything at the end, like most shows do. But it's just like such a convoluted show to the point where you really have to just pay attention. But I love it. I think it's excellent acting, excellent special effects. And then my last honorable mention, touching on my nerd side a little bit more, an animated show, which just finished its final season, but it's Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Huge fan of Star Wars. I love it so much. I'm not a huge fan of the more recent, franchise they made, the 7, 8, 9. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm still enjoying it a little bit. But Clone Wars is everything I wanted from by the time episode 2 came out, and I wasn't a giant fan of that one. It's everything I wanted that happened in between 2 and 3, and like there's so much that was untold, and the flip and Anakin and all that, just so much untold and so much depth to it, and it just does a good job at even giving personalities and stories to even some of the clones. Like you learn more about Captain Rex and Commander Cody, and you just learn about so many different clones and so many different personalities you never have even seen in the movies, and I think the show's fucking fantastic.
My honorable mentions, I have 5 of them because I was kind of thinking in my head like this would be my top 10. But then obviously for the purpose of the video, I had to narrow it down to 5. So I'm going to go with The Good Doctor on ABC. Probably the best medical drama I've ever seen. It's got really good humor in it as well. But the basic premise is the main character, Sean, he's autistic. And he has savant syndrome, but he's a surgeon. I have That 70s Show on here. Really underrated sitcom, I feel like. But I remember watching this religiously. I don't remember what nights it aired on, but I remember just eating dinner and we would watch that like right after or something, like the newest episode or whatever. Man vs. Food with Adam Richman, not the new one with Casey Webb because he's awful. The first 2 or 3 seasons with Adam Richman was such a great show just because I don't like the food channel or like cooking shows where they just show you making food. He went around to these restaurants in a different city every week. He would go and do a couple restaurants, show their couple of their like main dishes that they would serve there, and then he would do a food challenge at the end of the episode. So you got like the little bit of like it was a cooking show almost, or like a regular Food Network show, and then it was also a competitive show as well. Then I have Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, I think any child that was around our age, around like 1999, 2000, that when this came out, was just obsessed with this show. I mean, every Saturday morning I would watch it when I got up, and it was like, especially with the card game coming out afterwards, that also took over. I mean, to this day, I'm pretty sure it's still the most popular card game of all time. I'm not into the card game as much anymore. I was playing it up until a couple years ago, but it just gets too expensive trying to keep up with all the newest stuff. But I do still go back and watch the anime from time to time. And then my last one is South Park. So I feel like people just assume that it's just a dirty, raunchy show about kids saying cuss words and stuff. But the reality of it is, it's political satire. As much as I hate talking about politics and all that kind of stuff, and it's not always political satire, but they do that really well. They do social commentary, pop culture, all that stuff really well. They're the best comedic duo, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, that I know of that will hit both sides equally. When you watch like SNL or like all the late night talk shows, they're all so liberal. It's obvious. They're just all the time just making fun of Republicans, and I'm like, at least make fun of the Democrats sometimes. Like,
On the
not
same side.
they all do dumb shit. But that's what I love about South Park. They hit everybody equally. I think more people just need to give it a chance to take it and look past the jokes and look at the actual metaphors and stuff that the show is trying to get across.
For my number one, I know Connor because it's not in your wheelhouse, so I know you probably not seen it. But this one, when it came out, also surprised me. I didn't know it was even coming out. And that is Ozark. It is, it's so similar to Breaking Bad, so it was really hard to kind of place which one I wanted to put in there. I love them both. I'd watch them over and over again. But Ozark just puts it more in that list for me. I think I felt more suspense in Ozark, and I think honestly, it's probably got better characters. I would say, as much as I love Jesse Pinkman and Walt in Breaking Bad, I think these overall there's a whole handful of characters in Ozark that are just so fantastic and so developed, and just they touch on them so much in each episode. Even the side characters just get their shine, and it's just so great. And the entire thing is just a guy just misplaced, or just running a scheme when he's this financial advisor essentially for this cartel, and when money goes missing, he hurries up and plans a scheme before he gets killed to, hey, I'll just launder some money for you in the Ozarks. It's an easy cash grab, and everything that happens there, all the businesses that he develops and brings up, and the kind of backwoods redneck shit that kind of happens at the same time, just cause conflict, not just between him and the cartel, but between different kind of cartels in this area too. It's just there's different, people growing their own marijuana, or doing their own kind of strip club business and everything, and everything just conflicts in like a big kind of battle between personalities essentially. And it's just such a good show, and probably the best thing I've seen Jason Bateman in, because he is the writer of this, director of most episodes, and he's the main star of it. Plays Marty Bird in there, but he's so good, because before going into this one, I just kind of knew him as this great kind of comedy actor, very smart ass, dry kind of comedy actor, and then seeing him in this is just such a different turn for him, and I think this is by far the best thing he's done. And I know the show's won so much already, and it's getting recognized longer, or more and more with the longer that it goes on. But yeah, the show is, I'll still say, going forward, my number one favorite show I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's my wife loves it too, and I know a lot of people that watch it. All right, so for my number one, it probably won't come as a surprise to anyone who knows me. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I fell in love with the characters immediately. The premise is that it's just five friends. They own and run a bar, and they just get into the most ridiculous storylines and schemes and everything possible. And then by the end of it, it just gets resolved, and nothing ever happens to them. Like, they do some very illegal, questionable stuff in the most silliest of fashions, but never get reprimanded for it. And I think it's just such a bizarre premise. And I do enjoy the fact that the characters themselves, like, one character can be the dumbest person in the room in one scene, and then the very next scene they'll make the most logical sense out of anybody. It's not like they don't have character traits that are pretty consistent. It's just that that's just the way that the writing goes. I know my wife and probably everybody that knows me is just sick of this obsession that I have with it, because I quote it constantly, and I mean, I get yelled at for it sometimes. But the humor's dark, and like I said, the characters are pretty much the worst people imaginable, but they're so damn likable all at the same time, and I just can't pinpoint it. It's like sometimes they're just very endearing and just make a lot of sense, but then they'll just do some of the most bizarre shit. I constantly think with this show, where's the line gonna stop? Honestly, I think they blew past the line in the pilot, because it was all about race, and I mean, Charlie Day's character says the N-word in the first episode. I'm like, oh, the jeez. All right, well, they come out swinging, apparently. Danny DeVito has just become one of the best TV characters of all time as Frank. Kudos to him for having just such an open mind when he joined the show. Like, he probably had no idea what all they were going to have him do over the next 10 years. I just think that's so funny that FX was going to cancel the show after the first season unless they got, like, an A-list actor to join the cast, and they ended up getting Danny DeVito, of all people. And he's just like this gross old man. He's probably the best character on the show.
Frank's character just he's a disgusting person, because it's great because just the idea of him being like this rich top guy who would rather slum it and sleep in a stained mattress with Charlie, and just be roommates with him. And that's great because after every season that goes on, his balding head, but hair around it just gets longer and longer. So it's just like eventually just long wisps of gross. And it's just like, his character is so great. Yeah, thank God he joined, because the smart decision was when he joined in season 2 was just having him stay around, like having him stick around and just do it, because he's easily one of the, and all of them are great. They're just personalities meshing together are great, but he's just easily one of the better characters. Him and Charlie together are just phenomenal.
Absolutely. And the show, it's going to be entering its 15th season in 2021. Honestly, the show by any means probably shouldn't have made it very far. But the fact that it has made it this far is just a testament to how much people have fallen in love with it. And I think it's probably more of a cult following in the beginning. Nowadays, it's become very mainstream and ingrained in the pop culture. Alright guys, that does it for our top 5 favorite shows of all time. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a future upload. Leave your personal top 5 list down in the comments. We would love to see some of you guys' picks and opinions. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you in the next one, but until then, we've been off script, and that's a wrap.